The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of King Herod, behold, a Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and the scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written through the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word that I too may go and do him homage." After their audience with the king, they set out. And behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them, until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. To appreciate the meaning of this day for our Jesuit parish, we need to see deeper than the camels and the turbans. The wise men are prototypes of St. Ignatius and all of us in the Ignatian family. I'll get to that, but first let me set the stage for their arrival at the manger. From the beginning, the Church has struggled with inclusion and exclusion. Who can come to the table? The Church has struggled to recognize her children and to cherish the gifts they bring to our family. The first generation of Christians wrestled with what to do with Gentiles, like the Magi. Do you first need to be Jewish before you can become a Christian? How do these two segregated communities that barely spoke to one another before come together? These days, we endure Episcopal pearl clutching about gay folks and transgendered folks. So Matthew, when he's writing his gospel about 80 AD, he's writing this story and using his material. What he's saying, he's telling his folks and us that it's time to move over and make room in the manger. As Paul said in the second reading, in Christ Jesus, the Gentiles are now co-heirs with the Jews, members of the same body, and sharers in the promise through the preaching of the gospel. These Gentiles, these wise men, saw the star, and it spoke to them. Then they set out to follow it. They show us that the deep yearnings within us for meaning at some point become connected, related to, fulfilled in the fabric of the whole universe. Somehow there's an interconnection. That yearning is ordered to bearing fruit, to taking action in the world. It cannot be done alone. It cannot be done without risk. It is done by meeting strangers. It is done by going to strange places beyond where you're comfortable. That yearning is stirred in the intuition of a gentle providence, as Dante says, of a love that moves the stars. In and yet beyond what we can understand and experience. There are moments, I hope, in all of our lives of being shown, of reading between the lines, of being led out of yourself in an unexpected way, seeing a newborn, watching a sunset, sitting with a dying parent. There are moments when you realize what a tiny speck, what a tiny particle you are in a vast universe, and yet that you matter, and that you have been wordlessly addressed, invited forward. We call this yearning, ordered to bearing fruit, ordered to action in the world, discernment. In a video in December, I shared with you what our Father General, Arturo Sosa, has said about the distinction between ideology and discernment. All ideology is deceptive because it distorts freedom of thought. Ideology is like wearing a pair of spectacles that oblige you to see things only one way. Ideology presents one unique and unchanging point of view, which limits freedom of thought. Ignatian spirituality is radically anti-ideological because its guiding principles are interior freedom, discernment, and choosing between different options at particular times in specific situations. There are no ready-made answers, which is why we need to leave behind ideologies and cliches and methods that once seemed permanent and unchanging. That's what initiating processes involve: walking down new paths without knowing where they will lead you, opening up new horizons to allow the Spirit to act. Of course, this approach evokes insecurities, because as human beings, we like things to be very clear and settled. But the fact is that experiencing God is destabilizing. However, what brings me personally great peace is knowing that Jesus has promised in the gospel that he will be with us always until the end of the world. If we rely on this security, then we can allow ourselves to be swept along, allowing God to guide us. Like the Magi, God draws us to find him and ourselves, to find him within and share him with others. Wise women and wise men follow the insights they have. They ask for directions. They seek guidance from religious officials, but they also know when to trust their own dreams and their own intuitions and go home by another route. Following the light of the star, they now carry that light and that joy within. Having found him, they never stop seeking him in others. They make room around the table. They make room in the manger for everyone. In this new year, may all of us walk down new paths without knowing where they will lead us. May we open paths where the Spirit can act. Like the Magi, may we allow ourselves to be swept along, allowing God to guide us.